It was his signature. But my father had been dead for 43 days when that document was supposedly signed. I didn't say a word. My father built Calloway Fabrication from a single lease on a warehouse in Akron, Ohio. 31 years of 6 a.m. mornings and missed dinners and calloused hands. By the time his heart gave out on a Tuesday in November, the company was worth $4.2 million and employed 63 people who sent flowers to the funeral because they actually meant it. He was that kind of man. The kind who remembered his floor supervisor's daughter's soccer games. The kind who left a card on your desk when your dog died. My stepmother, Renata, was not that kind of woman. She came into my father's life 3 years after my mother passed. She was polished in the way that required maintenance, highlighted hair at a specific salon, nails done every 10 days, a laugh calibrated to charm rooms full of people she'd forget the moment she left. My father loved her. That was the thing I could never fully resolve inside myself. He was sharp, careful, a man who read contracts before he signed them, and he loved her completely. So I tried. I learned to have coffee with her on Sunday mornings without checking my phone. I brought her flowers from the farmer's market because he asked me to. I kept the peace because he was worth it. He put her in his will. Of course he did. She was his wife. But my father was also methodical in the way that only self-made people are. He had spent 31 years watching what happened to businesses when the founding family lost control in a moment of grief or chaos or bad paperwork. So 6 years before he died, he set up a revocable living trust. The house, the investment accounts, the majority stake in Calloway Fabrication. He walked me through it himself at the kitchen table on a Saturday afternoon with a legal pad and a highlighter and a pot of bad coffee between us. Renata gets the house and the joint accounts, he said. That's fair. That's right. But the business goes to you. You've been here. You know what this company is. He'd had the trust drafted by a firm in Cleveland, signed in front of a notary, 2 witnesses, everything ironclad. I thought I understood what that meant. The morning after his funeral, Renata asked me to move my things out of my childhood bedroom. Not unkindly, she would say later. Practically. She had her sister coming to stay and needed the space. I drove to my apartment with 3 boxes in the back of my car and a hollow feeling behind my sternum that I told myself was just grief. It wasn't just grief. Within 2 weeks, she had changed the alarm code on the house. Within 3, she had called the company's office manager, a woman named Phyllis, who had been with my father for 19 years, and informed her that all financial correspondence should be directed to Renata going forward. Phyllis called me immediately. I thanked her and wrote it down. I was writing a lot of things down. I had been named executor of my father's estate. That meant I had access to the accounts, the filings, the documentation trail. I wasn't looking for anything when I first found it. I was reviewing the trust documentation to begin the probate process, cross-referencing dates, doing the methodical work my father had raised me to do. And there it was, a trust amendment, dated November 14th, notarized. Signed with my father's name in the precise, slightly right-leaning cursive I had watched sign my report cards and birthday cards and, once, a cast on my broken wrist. My father died on November 14th, at 4:17 inches the morning. I was in the hospital room. I held his hand. The nurse noted the time. The amendment removed my stake in Calloway Fabrication entirely. It transferred controlling interest to Renata. It also included a clause buried in the 3rd paragraph, the kind of place people stop reading, that authorized her to sell the company at her discretion without consultation within 18 months of his death. I set the document down on my kitchen table. I made a cup of coffee. I stood at the window and watched a sparrow sit on the fire escape railing for a long time. Then I called the attorney, not to confront anyone. I called to ask a single question. Had his firm prepared this amendment? There was a pause on the line. Then, Miss Calloway, we have no record of drafting or filing that document. I said thank you and hung up. Here is what I did not do. I did not call Renata. I did not show up at the house. I did not post anything, tell anyone, or give any indication that I had found what I had found. Because my father taught me something else at that kitchen table on that Saturday afternoon. He tapped the legal pad with his highlighter and he said, "The moment you show your hand before you're ready, you've already lost." I hired a forensic documents examiner out of Columbus. She had testified in 17 federal cases. I overnighted her the amendment and a sample of my father's authentic signature from a document dated 2 months prior to his death. Her report came back in 8 days. The signatures did not match. The notary stamp, I had already looked this up, belonged to a notary whose license had lapsed 14 months before the amendment was supposedly executed. Then I found the wire transfers. I had access to the estate accounts as executor. In the 6 weeks since my father's death, $340,000 had moved out of the estate's operating account in 4 separate transfers. 3 went to an LLC I didn't recognize. 1 went directly to a personal account. I traced the LLC through the state business registry. It had been formed 11 days after my father's funeral. The registered agent was a man named Darius Cole. I looked up Darius Cole. He had a LinkedIn profile describing him as a private investment consultant. He also appeared in several photographs on Renata's Instagram from the previous spring, tagged at a resort in Scottsdale, before she had made her account private. So that was who she was planning to spend the money with. I brought everything to a federal attorney, not a local family lawyer, a federal attorney, because wire fraud involving estate accounts crosses state lines in very specific ways, and I wanted this done correctly. I sat across from him in a glass-walled office on a Thursday morning with a manila folder 2 inches thick, and I walked him through every document. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Miss Calloway, how long have you had this?" I told him 3 weeks. He looked at me the way people look at someone who has walked through a burning building and come out the other side with all their papers in order. "You didn't touch anything? Didn't move the accounts?" I needed her to keep going, I said. If she knew I knew, she'd stop. She had not stopped. While I was sitting in that attorney's office, the 5th transfer was processing. There is a specific type of arrogance that belongs to people who believe they are the smartest person in a room they haven't fully looked around. Renata had spent 3 years watching me defer to my father, stay quiet at dinners, make coffee on Sunday mornings. She had concluded that I was soft, manageable, that grief would make me more so. She had not considered that I had spent those same 3 years learning exactly how my father ran his business and managed his assets, because he was teaching me. Because the whole point was that I would take over one day. She had moved into a house and a life and had not noticed that the foundation had already been laid for someone else. The federal attorney filed a motion to freeze the estate accounts 2 days later. He contacted the FBI field office in Cleveland. I did not know the exact timing of what would happen next. What I knew was that Renata had scheduled a meeting with a business broker for the following Thursday. She was going to list Calloway Fabrication for sale. 63 employees, 19 years of Phyllis, 31 years of 6 a.m. mornings. She was going to sell it because she thought she could, because she thought a forged document and a lapsed notary stamp and 4 wire transfers were enough to rewrite what my father had spent his entire life building. I asked the attorney if I could be there, not at the FBI meeting, at the broker's office. He told me he couldn't officially recommend it. He also told me the address and time. I wore a gray blazer. I sat in the small conference room at the broker's office at a round table with a water pitcher and a legal pad on it, and I waited. I was there before Renata arrived. When she walked in, she was wearing the camel coat she had bought herself the week after my father's funeral. Her hair was freshly done. She looked comfortable in the way that people look comfortable when they believe they have already won. She saw me and she stopped walking. I said, "Good morning." She looked at the broker. She looked back at me. Something moved across her face. I had expected panic, or anger, or the particular calculation of someone deciding how to play an unexpected move. What I actually saw was simpler than that. It was the look of someone who has just understood that the room they're standing in is not the room they thought it was. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was even. She was still performing. "I'm the executor of my father's estate," I said. "This company is part of that estate. I thought I should be present." She pulled out a chair and sat down slowly. She set her bag on the table. She folded her hands. I will say this for her. She was composed in a way that I had not expected. She was still trying to calculate. The broker was already confused. He had his folder open, but he hadn't said anything. He was looking between us with the expression of a man who was beginning to understand that his Thursday morning had taken a turn. The door opened before anyone spoke again. There were 2 of them. They showed their credentials to the broker first, then to Renata. Special agents, FBI, Financial Crimes Division. One of them asked if Renata would come with them. He used a tone that indicated this was not a question with a no option. Renata looked at me for a long moment. I did not look away. I did not smile. I had not come there for a performance. I had come because 63 people who sent flowers to a funeral because they meant it deserved to know that the company they worked for was not going to be quietly liquidated by a woman with a fake notary stamp and a boyfriend in Scottsdale. She left with them without another word. Here is what happened after. The forensic examiner's report was submitted as evidence. The notary stamp belonging to a woman who had voluntarily surrendered her commission 14 months prior and had no record of executing any document in November was confirmed as fraudulent. The LLC registered 11 days after the funeral was dissolved by court order. Darius Cole was separately charged. The $340,000 in wire transfers was recovered. The estate accounts were restored. The forged trust amendment was invalidated. The original trust, the one my father had drafted at a kitchen table on a Saturday afternoon with a legal pad and a pot of bad coffee, stood exactly as he had written it. Renata was charged with estate fraud, forgery of a legal instrument, and wire fraud. The wire fraud charge alone carries a federal sentence of up to 20 years. She hired an attorney. I am told the case is proceeding. I do not spend time thinking about what her mornings look like now. Here is what I do spend time thinking about. Phyllis called me the day after it happened. She had heard something through the office, the way news moves through places where people have worked together for a long time. She didn't ask me for details. She said, "Your dad always said you were the most like him? I thought you should know he was right." I sat with that for a while. My father built something real. He built it out of early mornings and handshakes and remembering that his floor supervisor's daughter played soccer. He set up a trust because he was careful and because he understood that what you build can be taken from you in an afternoon of bad paperwork if you don't protect it properly. He left me the tools to protect it. Not because he was worried, I don't think he ever imagined something like this, but because that was how he loved people. He taught you things. He prepared you. He handed you the knowledge and trusted you to know when to use it. The morning the estate was officially settled, I drove to the warehouse in Akron. I parked in the same spot I used to park when I'd bring my father lunch on summer days when I was 16. The loading dock was running. I could hear the equipment from the parking lot. I sat in my car for a few minutes with the window down. 63 people, all still there. I went inside. The company belongs to me now, the way my father always intended. I have been learning it from the inside out, the way he did. Early mornings, a lot of bad coffee. The floor supervisor's name is Marcus, and his daughter is 12. And last week she scored 2 goals in a tournament game and he showed me the video on his phone in the break room. I watched it twice. I don't know if my father knew Renata was capable of what she did. I don't think he did. I don't think he would have loved her the way he did if he'd seen it. But I think he understood, in the specific way that people who have built things understand, that love is not the same as protection. You can love someone and still make sure the paperwork is correct. You can trust someone and still put the safeguards in place. The trust, the executor designation, the documentation trail he left me. None of it was pessimism. It was care. It was him sitting at a kitchen table with a highlighter, making sure I would be okay after he was gone. She thought she had taken everything. She had a forged signature and an LLC and a broker appointment and a camel coat she bought the week of his funeral. She thought that was enough. She forgot that I had 30 years of my father's teachings, every document he ever filed, and 43 days of very careful silence. That was more than enough. If you are ever in a position where something feels wrong, where the paperwork doesn't match the timeline, where the signatures don't quite look right, where the transfers are moving in directions they shouldn't do, not show your hand early. Do not confront before you are ready. Write it down. Verify it. Get the right people involved. The truth does not need to be loud to be effective. My father never raised his voice in 31 years of business. He just made sure everything was documented. I understand now why he was so calm. He always knew that the records would speak for themselves.